Hello, beautiful souls, and welcome back to another evening of stories that will make your heart race and your spirit. Sir, I'm absolutely thrilled you're here with me tonight, wherever you are in this vast, beautiful world. Before we dive into tonight's tale, I want to send out a heartfelt thank you to every single listener tuning in from across the globe. Whether you're in the UK, snuggled under a cozy blanket, in Canada watching the Northern Lights dance, across your sky, in New Zealand and Australia greeting a new dawn, in the heart of Europe, Belgium, Spain, Sweden, and the Czech Republic or anywhere else the story has reached us. The United States, South Africa, Argentina, Ireland, Costa Rica, Trinidad, and beyond. I see you. I appreciate you. This community we've built together means everything. If you're new here, I warmly invite you to subscribe and enable notifications so you never miss a single moment of the stories we're weaving together. These tales are designed to be experienced fully. And there's nothing quite like the anticipation of knowing a new chapter is waiting for you tonight. Settle in because we're embarking on a journey like no other. Bound by moonlight, a tale of paranormal romance, supernatural power, and the kind of love that defies every rule, every boundary, and every expectation. Let's dive in. His hand closed around her throat, not crushing but claiming. The heat of his palm seared through her skin like a brand. You ran from me, he growled, his voice dropping to something barely human. Do you have any idea what you've awakened? Sera's breath hitched as his eyes bled from storm gray to molten silver, the mark of ancient royalty. I didn't know, she whispered. You knew enough. His thumb traced her racing pulse. And now, little runner, you're going to learn exactly what it means to be mine. She thought disappearing into the chaos of the Lunar Summit would save her. Sera Ashford had one desperate plan: hide among the servants until the feast ended, then escape before Alpha Garrett could drag her back to Crimson Vale and force her into a mating that would destroy her. She almost made it. But exhaustion is a cruel master, and fear an even crueler one. When she stumbled into the gardens seeking a moment's rest, when she found a quiet bench hidden by weeping willows, when she saw the figure sitting in the shadows, silent, still, unthreatening, she made a choice that would change everything. Just 5 minutes, she told herself. Just long enough to catch her breath. She sat on the far edge of the bench trying to stay invisible. But the night was cold, and the stranger radiated warmth like a furnace. Inch by inch, her exhausted body betrayed her, seeking that heat, that safety. When her head finally came to rest against his shoulder, when she felt the steady rise and fall of his breathing, when his scent, pine and winter snow, wrapped around her like a blanket, she whispered one last desperate plea into the darkness. Please don't let them find me. And then she slept. She didn't know that the shoulder she was using as a pillow belonged to Kael Thornridge. She didn't know that the silent stranger in the dark was the sovereign of all 4 territories. She didn't know that the man she'd just curled up against was the most dangerous wolf in existence. And she definitely didn't know that when she woke up, running would no longer be an option. Because now he had her set. And Kael Thornridge never let go of what was his. The feast had been raging for 3 hours when Sera finally found her hiding place in the gardens. Inside the grand cathedral hall, hundreds of wolves celebrated the Lunar Summit, the annual gathering where treaties were signed, alliances forged, and mates claimed. For Sera it was a hunting ground. Alpha Garrett was inside searching for her. His enforcer Magnus prowled the corridors with orders to drag her back to Crimson Vale by any means necessary. Her stepfather, Beta Aldrich, had already accepted payment for the mating contract. Sera's future sold for trade routes and political favor. She'd been running for 2 days, stealing rides on transport trucks, hiding in cargo holds, anything to reach the human territories where wolf law couldn't touch her. The summit had seemed like the perfect place to disappear. So many wolves, so much chaos. She'd stolen a server's uniform and slipped into the kitchens, planning to hide until the transport buses left at dawn. But Magnus had spotted her. She'd run through the service corridors, through the crowded ballrooms, finally bursting out into the sprawling gardens that surrounded the cathedral. The night air was sharp and cold, carrying the scent of frost and late-blooming roses. She couldn't keep running. Her legs were shaking, her lungs burning. She needed just a moment to rest, to think, to figure out her next move. The gardens were a maze of hedges and marble statuary, lit by ceremonial lanterns that cast everything in flickering gold. She stumbled down a winding path, away from the noise and light of the feast, until she found a secluded alcove hidden behind curtains of weeping willow branches. A stone bench sat beside a dark reflecting pool. And on that bench, barely visible in the shadows, sat a man. Sera froze, her hand flying to her mouth to stifle a gasp. The man didn't move. He sat slouched forward, elbows on his knees, a glass of amber liquid dangling from one hand. He wore all black, a long coat with the collar turned up, obscuring most of his face. His head was bowed, his attention fixed on the dark water of the pool. He looked like he was drowning in his own thoughts. Sera took a careful step backward. She should leave, find another hiding place. But exhaustion pulled at her bones like lead weights. She'd been running on adrenaline and fear for 48 hours. She had nothing left. And the man, he looked as exhausted as she felt. Like he'd come here to escape the same feast she was fleeing. Like he wanted to be alone just as badly as she did. Please be drunk, she thought desperately. Please be too far gone to care. She crept forward, moving as quietly as possible, and lowered herself onto the far end of the bench. As far from him as she could get while still sitting down. The man didn't react. Didn't turn his head. Didn't growl or challenge her presence. Sera pulled her knees to her chest, wrapping her arms around them, trying to make herself as small as possible. The stolen server uniform was thin, offering no protection against the November cold. She shivered violently, her teeth starting to chatter. Minutes passed. The only sounds were the distant music from the feast and the gentle lap of water against the edges of the reflecting pool. The man still hadn't moved. Maybe he was asleep. Or so drunk he didn't even notice her. Either way, Sera was grateful. But the cold was getting worse. Her fingers had gone numb. She could see her breath misting in the air. And the man, the stranger, was radiating heat like a bonfire. She could feel it from 3 feet away, that impossible warmth that only came from an alpha's metabolism running hot. It called to her like a siren song, promising relief from the biting cold. Just a little closer, her desperate mind whispered. Just enough to stop shaking. Sera shifted on the bench. Inch by inch, drawn by warmth and exhaustion, she moved toward the center. Toward him. The man remained motionless. She moved again. And again. Until her shoulder was almost brushing his coat. The warmth was incredible. Like sitting next to a furnace. Her shivering started to ease. Her eyelids grew heavy. No, she told herself. You can't fall asleep. Magnus is still looking. Garrett is still hunting. You need to stay alert. But her body had other ideas. It had been running on empty for too long. And now, surrounded by warmth, by the steady presence of someone who wasn't trying to hurt her, who wasn't demanding anything, who was just there. Her head tilted sideways. It found a resting place. Not stone. Not wood. A shoulder. Broad and solid and impossibly warm. The man went rigid. Every muscle in his body locked tight. Sera felt it even through the layers of wool and exhaustion. She should move. Should apologize. Should run. But she was so tired. So cold. And he was so warm. Sorry, she mumbled, the words slurring as consciousness started to slip away. Just 5 minutes. Please. Don't let them find me. She felt rather than heard his sharp intake of breath. Felt the way his hand, large and gloved, hesitated in the air near her shoulder. And then, so carefully it made her chest ache, she felt that hand settle over her, shielding her from the wind. The last thing Sera registered before sleep claimed her completely was his scent. Pine and snow and something wild, something that made her dormant wolf stir for the first time in years. Safe, her wolf murmured. He smells like home. Then there was nothing but darkness and the steady beat of a stranger's heart beneath her cheek. Kael Thornridge, sovereign of the 4 territories and the most feared predator on the continent, stared down at the woman who'd just used him as a pillow. This was unprecedented. He'd come to the gardens to escape the suffocating crowd of sycophants inside, the alphas trying to curry favor, the omegas doused in perfumes that made his nose burn, the endless political maneuvering that made his wolf pace and snarl with irritation. He'd been nursing his scotch in blessed silence when he'd heard her coming. The frantic heartbeat, the gasping breaths, the scent of fear so sharp it cut through the roses. He'd stayed still, expecting a threat. A spy. An assassin. Instead, he'd gotten a terrified woman in a server's uniform who'd collapsed onto his bench and promptly passed out on his shoulder. She was tiny. Delicate. Her bones felt fragile against his bulk. She shivered even in her sleep, her body trying to absorb his warmth. And her scent. Kael closed his eyes, breathing it in despite himself. Honeysuckle. Sweet and clean, buried under layers of fear and exhaustion, but there. Unmistakable. His wolf, which had been pacing and snarling all evening, went completely still. Then it started to growl. Low and possessive. What? No, Kael told it firmly. Not this. Not now. Not ever. But his wolf wasn't listening. It pushed against his control, trying to surface, trying to claim the woman before anyone else could touch her. Kael had felt this pull once before, 15 years ago. The mate bond. The biological imperative that told a wolf they'd found their perfect match. It had ended with Lyra dead in his arms. He couldn't, go through that again. But his hand was already moving, pulling his coat wider to shield the woman's face from the cold wind. His body was already angling to protect her from the exposure of the open garden. She mumbled something in her sleep. It sounded like please. Kael's jaw clenched. Who was she running from? What had put that level of terror in her scent? Before he could pursue that thought, he heard footsteps. Heavy boots on gravel. 2 sets moving fast. Check the gardens, a rough voice called. Alpha Garrett said she came this way. Kael's eyes snapped open, bleeding from gray to silver in an instant. 2 enforcers emerged from the hedge maze, carrying flashlights. They wore the insignia of Crimson Veil Pack. They were hunting someone. They were hunting her. The woman tensed in her sleep, a whimper escaping her throat. Even unconscious, she knew danger was close. The enforcer's flashlight beams swept across the statues, the hedges, moving inexorably toward the alcove. Kael made a decision. He let his aura roll out, not the full crushing weight of his dominance but enough. Enough to make the enforcer's wolves cower. Enough to make their knees weak. The flashlight beam hit his face. Both enforcers froze. Then they saw his eyes, glowing silver in the darkness, the unmistakable mark of royal blood. As sovereign, one of them stammered, dropping to his knees so fast his kneecap cracked against the stone. We didn't know, we were just. Leave, Kael said. One word. Quiet. Lethal. We're looking for a runaway, sire. An Omega named. I said leave. Kael's voice dropped an octave, barely human. If you disturb my peace again, I will decorate the cathedral gates with your heads. The enforcers scrambled backward, tripping over themselves in their haste to escape. They vanished back toward the feast, leaving Kael alone with his unwitting burden. He looked down at her again. She'd relaxed back into sleep, her breathing evening out, trusting him to keep her safe even though she had no idea who he was. Sera? He murmured, testing the name he'd heard the enforcer almost say. What have you gotten yourself into? And more importantly, what had she just gotten him into? Because now that he'd protected her once, now that his wolf had tasted her scent and decided she was theirs, letting her go was going to be impossible. The woman, Sera, stirred against his shoulder. Her eyes fluttered open slowly, unfocused and confused. Then awareness hit. She jerked upright, scrambling backward on the bench, her eyes going wide with horror. I fell asleep. Oh gods, I'm sorry, I didn't mean. She looked at him properly for the first time. Kael knew what she saw. A man in expensive clothes sitting in the dark. Too large, too dangerous, too everything. His face was still in shadow, his collar still turned up. She couldn't see his features clearly. She definitely didn't recognize him. Did you hear them? She whispered, terror returning to her voice. The guards? They're looking for. They're gone, Kael said, keeping his voice low, gentle. Non-threatening. She stared at him, trying to read his expression in the darkness. You didn't call them over? No. Why not? Good question. Kael didn't have a good answer. Or rather, he had an answer she wasn't ready to hear. Because you smell like mate and my wolf will kill anyone who tries to take you. Instead, he said, you asked me not to let them find you. Sera blinked. You heard that? You said it before you fell asleep. Her cheeks flushed. Even in the dim light, he could see the color rise. I can't believe I used you as a pillow. I'm so sorry. That was completely inappropriate. You were exhausted, Kael interrupted. And cold. It's fine. It's not fine. She gestured vaguely at his clothes, his bearing. You're obviously important. I shouldn't have. What's your name? He asked, even though he already knew. She hesitated. Sera. Sera Ashford. And who are you running from, Sera Ashford? Her jaw tightened. No one. You're a terrible liar. I'm not. She stopped, seeming to realize denial was pointless. It doesn't matter. I should go. Thank you for not turning me in, and I'm sorry again for. She tried to stand. Kael's hand shot out, catching her wrist. Gently. Just enough to stop her. The moment his bare hand touched her skin, electricity shot up his arm and straight into his chest. Sera gasped, feeling it too. Her eyes went wide, locked on where his fingers circled her wrist. The mate bond snapped into place like a lightning strike. Golden threads, invisible to human eyes but blazing clear to wolf sight, sprang up between them. No, Kael thought desperately. Not this. Not now. But it was too late. His wolf was already howling in triumph. Already claiming her on a level that had nothing to do with choice and everything to do with destiny. What was that? Sera breathed. Kael released her wrist like it had burned him. Nothing. That wasn't nothing. I felt. You should go, he said roughly. Before those guards come back. She stared at him for a long moment, confusion and fear and something else warring in her expression. Then she nodded slowly, backing away. Thank you, she said quietly. For everything. She turned and ran, disappearing into the shadows of the garden. Kael sat alone in the silence, his hand still tingling where he'd touched her. Her scent, honeysuckle and home, lingered on his coat. He pulled out his phone and dialed. Reese, he said when his beta answered. Lock down the cathedral. No one leaves. And get me everything there is to know about an Omega named Sera Ashford. Sire? Reese sounded confused. Is something wrong? Kael looked at the place where Sera had disappeared, his wolf already demanding he go after her, track her down, claim her before anyone else could touch her. Everything, he said quietly, is about to change. Sera ran through the gardens, her heart pounding for entirely new reasons. The grand cathedral hall of Frosthaven was a monument to power. Vaulted ceilings stretched 3 stories high, supported by marble pillars carved with the history of the 4 territories. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured light across hundreds of wolves dressed in their finest. Alphas in tailored suits, betas in formal wear, omegas adorned in silk and jewels. Sera wore a stolen server's uniform, black slacks and a white button-down that hung loose on her thin frame. She kept her head down, carrying trays of champagne through the crowd, invisible. That was the plan. Stay invisible for 3 more hours until the summit ended, then slip onto one of the transport buses heading to the human cities. By dawn she'd be gone. Free. The champagne on her tray trembled as she moved through clusters of conversation. Fragments of talk drifted past her ears. The sovereign is here tonight. Can you believe it? I heard he hasn't taken a mate in 15 years. Too dangerous, they say. Anyone who gets close ends up. Shoo, don't speak of it. Not here. Sera's pulse quickened. The sovereign. Kael Thornridge, ruler of all 4 territories, the wolf so powerful that even alphas bowed their heads in his presence. She'd never seen him, only heard whispers. They said his wolf was touched by moon madness, that he'd killed his own father in a challenge when he was barely 17. Stay away from him, she told herself. Stay away from everyone. She was doing fine until she reached the grand staircase. Alpha Garrett stood at the base of the stairs, his bulk blocking the path to the servants' exit. He wore an expensive charcoal suit that did nothing to hide the cruelty in his small, pig-like eyes. Next to him stood Magnus, the enforcer who had left bruises on Sera's ribs 2 days ago when she'd refused to sign the mating contract. Her stepfather, Beta Aldrich, hovered nearby, wringing his hands. He looked like a weasel in formal wear, his thinning hair slicked back with too much pomade. She has to be here, Garrett growled loud enough that nearby conversations died. I paid for her. The contract is binding. I'm sure she just got confused, Alpha, Aldrich stammered. Sera isn't very bright. She probably wandered off. She ran, Magnus said flatly. His scarred face turned, scanning the crowd. And when I find her, she'll learn what happens to Omegas who embarrass their alphas. Sera's hands went numb. The champagne glasses on her tray clinked together. She needed to move, to back away slowly, but her feet were rooted to the marble floor. Turn around. Walk the other direction. Don't draw attention. She pivoted carefully, keeping her face angled down. 3 steps. 4. She was almost clear. Then someone bumped into her from behind. The tray tilted. Champagne sloshed. 1 glass tumbled, and Sera lunged forward to catch it before it shattered on the floor and drew every eye in the hall to her. Her hand closed around the glass. But her other hand, reaching for balance, grabbed onto fabric. A coat. Someone's arm. The world stopped. The fabric under her fingers was softer than anything she'd ever touched, expensive wool that probably cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime. But it wasn't the coat that made her freeze. It was the scent. Pine and snow. Clean, crisp, and underneath it something wild. Something that made her wolf, dormant and weak as it was, lift its head for the first time in years. Sera looked up. The man she'd grabbed onto was tall. Impossibly tall. He wore all black, black coat, black shirt, black tie. His hair was dark, almost black, falling just past his collar in waves that looked artfully careless. Sharp jawline. severe cheekbones. A mouth that would have been beautiful if it wasn't set in such a hard line. But it was his eyes that stole her breath. Gray. Storm cloud gray, the color of the sky before lightning struck. And they were looking directly at her. For a heartbeat, neither of them moved. Then his nostrils flared. His pupils dilated, the gray darkening to something almost black. A low sound vibrated from his chest, too quiet for human ears, but she felt it in her bones. Oh no. Sera jerked her hand back as if burned. I'm sorry, she gasped. I didn't mean. She didn't finish. She spun and ran, abandoning the tray on a nearby table. Her server's shoes slapped against the marble as she pushed through the crowd, heading for the side exit near the kitchens. Behind her, she heard Garrett's voice rise in triumph. There. That's her. Magnus. But another voice cut through the hall like a blade through silk. No one moves. 2 words. Quiet. Conversational. The entire room went silent. Sera skidded to a halt, her hand on the exit door. She turned, unable to stop herself. The man in black stood at the center of a widening circle. Wolves were backing away from him, creating space. The few who had been standing too close were now on their knees, heads bowed, necks bared in submission. Alpha Garrett had gone pale. Even Magnus, the brutal enforcer who feared nothing, had dropped his gaze to the floor. Sovereign Thornridge, Garrett stammered, dropping into a clumsy bow. We didn't realize, we were just. Kael Thornridge. The Sovereign. Sera's stomach dropped into her feet. She'd grabbed the most dangerous wolf in the 4 territories. Kael didn't acknowledge Garrett. He was looking across the hall, his gaze locked on Sera. In the silence, she could hear her own heartbeat thundering in her ears. Come here, Kael said. It wasn't loud. It wasn't a shout. But the command in those 2 words made her knees weak. Sera shook her head mutely. Something flickered in Kael's expression. Surprise? Amusement? She couldn't tell. That wasn't a request, little server, he said, and this time she heard the edge of a growl beneath the words. Come. Here. Every instinct screamed at her to run. But her feet were already moving, carrying her back across the hall. The crowd parted like water, giving her a clear path. She stopped 5 feet away from him. Close enough to see the muscle ticking in his jaw. Close enough to smell that intoxicating scent of pine and snow even stronger now, making her head spin. Closer, Kael said softly. I can't, Sera whispered. Her voice cracked. Please. I just want to leave. You touched me. His voice dropped lower, intimate despite the hundreds of witnesses. Do you know what that means? She didn't. She shook her head. Kael took a step toward her. Then another. Until he was close enough that she had to tilt her head back to meet his eyes. It means, he murmured, reaching out to catch a strand of her hair between his fingers, that you've just signed your death warrant. Because now that I've scented you, little Omega, there isn't a corner of this world where you can hide from me. Sera's breath came in short gasps. I don't understand. You will. He released her hair and turned to face Garrett, though his body remained angled toward her, protective. Possessive. You. The one claiming ownership of her. Garrett straightened, trying to recover his dignity. Yes, Sovereign. Sera Ashford is my contracted mate. Her stepfather signed the contract is void, Kael interrupted. Garrett's mouth fell open. But, Sovereign, with all due respect. Are you arguing with me? Kael's voice went dangerously soft. No, of course not. It's just, the trade agreements we negotiated will be renegotiated. With someone else. Kael's eyes flashed silver for just a moment, and Garrett stumbled backward. Leave. Now. Before I forget that this is a sacred summit and decide your pack doesn't need an alpha anymore. Garrett fled. Magnus followed, shooting one last venomous look at Sera before disappearing into the crowd. Beta Aldrich remained, practically vibrating with fear. Sovereign, please, I didn't know. If I'd realized she was, I would never have. You sold your stepdaughter to a brute, Kael said, each word precise and cold. You took payment to deliver her to someone who would have broken her. Do you deny this? Aldrich's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Leave my sight, Kael growled. And pray I don't remember your name tomorrow. Aldrich ran. The hall remained silent. Hundreds of wolves watched, but no one dared speak. Kael turned back to Sera. His hand came up, gentle this time, and tilted her chin so she had to look at him. His thumb brushed over her jawline, a touch so careful it made her throat tight. What's your name? He asked quietly. Sera, she whispered. Sera Ashford. Sera. He said it like he was testing the weight of it. You smell like honeysuckle. She didn't know what to say to that. Are you afraid of me, Sera? She should lie. She should say no, that she wasn't afraid of anything. But something about those storm-gray eyes made honesty spill out. Yes, she breathed. His mouth curved just slightly. Not quite a smile. Good. You should be. But not for the reasons you think. He lowered his hand and stepped back, though she could see the tension in his shoulders, as if it physically pained him to put distance between them. My beta Reese will escort you to my quarters. You'll wait for me there. Why? Because, Kael said, and now his eyes did flash silver, bright and predatory, we need to discuss why you smell like mate. The word hung in the air between them like a death sentence. Mate. Sera's vision tunneled. Her ears rang. Around her, gasps rippled through the crowd, followed by frantic whispers. Did he just say, the sovereign's mate? But she's nobody. Look at her. Kael's jaw tightened. He didn't raise his voice, but somehow the whispers died instantly. Reese, he called, never taking his eyes off Sera. A lean man with copper hair and sharp features materialized at Kael's shoulder. He wore glasses and carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone who'd stood beside power for years. Sovereign, Reese said calmly, as if volcanic revelations happened every day. Take her to the North Tower. The secure floor. No one enters except you and me. Kael's hand twitched, as if he wanted to reach for Sera again but was forcing himself not to. Make sure she has everything she needs. Of course. Reese turned to Sera with a professional smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Miss Ashford, if you'll follow me. Sera's feet wouldn't move. I don't understand. I can't be. We'll talk, Kael said, his voice softening just a fraction. Soon. But not here. Not with an audience. She wanted to argue. Wanted to run. But the way he was looking at her, like she was something precious and dangerous all at once, made her tongue stick to the roof of her mouth. Reese touched her elbow gently, steering her toward a side exit. As they walked, Sera felt Kael's gaze burning into her back. She risked one glance over her shoulder. He stood in the center of the hall, surrounded by bowing wolves, looking like a dark king surveying his empire. But his eyes were only on her. And they had bled from gray to pure, glowing silver. The North Tower was nothing like the servant quarters where Sera had hidden earlier. Reese led her through a private elevator that required both a keycard and a fingerprint scan. The doors opened onto a penthouse that took up the entire top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around 3 walls, offering a panoramic view of Frost Haven. The city sprawled below them, lights twinkling like fallen stars. The furniture was dark leather and steel, minimalist and masculine. Everything was spotless, almost sterile, as if no one actually lived here. The bedroom is through there, Reese said, gesturing to a door on the left. Bathroom is stocked. There should be clothes in the closet that will fit you. The sovereign keeps guest wardrobes prepared. Sera stood frozen in the entryway, hugging herself. Why does he think I'm his mate? Reese studied her over his glasses. I couldn't say. The sovereign doesn't explain himself to me. He paused, then added more gently, but I've known him for 12 years. I've never seen him react to anyone the way he reacted to you down there. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? That depends, Reese said carefully, on whether you survive it. The words sent ice down Sera's spine. What does that mean? Reese's expression flickered, something like pity crossed his face before he smoothed it away. The sovereign will be here within the hour. I suggest you clean up and try to stay calm. Running would be inadvisable. This building is under complete lockdown now, and his wolf is already on edge. You're telling me I'm trapped. I'm telling you that you're safer here than anywhere else in the 4 territories right now. Reese moved toward the elevator. Every wolf in that hall saw what happened. Word is already spreading. By morning, every pack will know the sovereign has found a potential mate. That makes you either the most protected woman alive, or the biggest target. The elevator doors closed behind him, leaving Sera alone in the vast, cold penthouse. Her legs finally gave out. She sank onto the leather couch, her whole body trembling. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. She was nobody, a rejected omega from a backwater pack sold off like livestock. She wasn't special. She wasn't powerful. She was just trying to survive. And now the most dangerous wolf in existence thought she was his mate. The scent hit her again even though he wasn't here. Pine and snow, woven into the very air of this place. It was everywhere, in the furniture, the walls, lingering like a ghost. Her wolf stirred again, pushing against the barriers she'd built around it for years. No, she told herself firmly. You can't want this. You can't want him. But her traitorous body was already relaxing into the couch, surrounded by his scent, feeling safer than she had in months. She forced herself to stand. She needed to think, to plan. The bathroom, Reese had said. Maybe there was a window. Maybe she could. The thought died as she entered the bedroom. It was dominated by a massive bed with dark gray sheets. But that wasn't what stopped her. On the bed lay fresh clothes, soft black leggings, a deep green sweater that looked impossibly warm, and undergarments still in packaging. He'd planned for this. Or someone had. How long had they been preparing? Sera picked up the sweater. It was cashmere, butter soft against her fingers. She'd never owned anything this nice. The server uniform she wore was stained with champagne and sweat, the fabric scratchy and cheap. Before she could second-guess herself, she grabbed the clothes and headed for the bathroom. The bathroom was all white marble and chrome. The shower had 6 different heads and a built-in bench. Sera stripped off the uniform, catching sight of herself in the full-length mirror. Bruises mottled her ribs, purple and yellow, gifts from Magnus 3 days ago. Her collarbone jutted out too sharply. Her hair was a tangled mess of dark brown waves. She looked exactly like what she was, a wolf who'd been running on fumes for too long. Why would someone like him want someone like me? She didn't have an answer. So she stepped into the shower and let the hot water scald away the question. 20 minutes later, clean and dressed in clothes that actually fit, Sera felt almost human again. The sweater was too big, hanging off one shoulder, but it was warm, soft. She caught herself bringing the collar to her nose, breathing in that pine scent that seemed permanently woven into everything here. She was standing by the windows watching the city lights when she heard the elevator chime. Her heart kicked into overdrive. She turned, backing up until her shoulders hit the cold glass. Kael stepped out of the elevator. He'd removed his coat and tie. His black shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He looked less formal now, but somehow more dangerous. Like he'd shed the civilized veneer. His eyes found her immediately. He went very still. "You showered?" he said, his voice rough. Sera nodded, not trusting her voice. He moved toward her with that same predatory grace she'd noticed in the hall. Not fast, but inevitable. Like a wolf stalking prey that had nowhere left to run. "The clothes fit," he observed, stopping a few feet away. "Yes, thank you. I think." She forced herself to meet his eyes. "Why am I here?" "Because you touched me," Kael said simply. "And I touched you. And now neither of us can pretend it didn't happen." "I don't understand what that means." He studied her for a long moment. "How much do you know about true mates, Sera?" "Just stories. Legends." She wrapped her arms around herself. "They say it's rare. 1 in 1,000 wolves, maybe less. And that when you find them, you know immediately. The scent, the pull, it's supposed to be undeniable." "It is," Kael said quietly. "I've ruled for 15 years. In that time, I've met tens of thousands of wolves. Alphas, betas, omegas, every bloodline, every pack. Not one of them made my wolf even raise its head." He took another step closer. "And then you grabbed my arm to catch a champagne glass, and my wolf tried to claw through my skin to claim you right there in front of everyone." Sera's breath caught. "That doesn't make sense. I'm nobody. I'm weak. I can barely shift. My wolf is practically dormant. How could I be?" "You think power is measured by how often you shift?" Kael interrupted. "You think strength is measured by force?" He moved closer still, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. "You survived being sold. You escaped your pack alone with no resources. You had the courage to run even when you knew you'd be hunted. That's not weakness, Sera. That's survival. That's desperation," she whispered. "Sometimes they're the same thing." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers brushed her shoulder, adjusting the collar of the sweater that had slipped down. His touch was careful, reverent. "You're wearing my scent now. The shower didn't wash it off, it's in your skin. Do you know what that means?" She shook her head. "It means my wolf has already claimed you on some level. It means that every wolf within a mile of you will know you're under my protection." His thumb traced along her collarbone, feather light. "It means I'm about 10 seconds away from doing something very inadvisable." "Like what?" The words came out breathier than she intended. His eyes flashed silver. "Like marking you before we've had a single real conversation." Sera's pulse jumped. She should step back. Create distance. But her body wasn't listening to reason. "You said in the hall that I'd sign my death warrant." Kael's expression darkened. His hand dropped away from her shoulder. "Yes." "Why?" He turned away, moving to the windows. The lights of Frost Haven reflected in the glass, casting his profile in sharp relief. Because being connected to me is a death sentence, Sera. It always has been. I don't understand. I had a mate once, Kael said, his voice flat, emotionless. Before I took the throne. Her name was Lyra. She was an alpha's daughter from the Eastern Territories. Beautiful. Strong. Everything a sovereign's mate should be. He paused. She died 6 months after we announced the bond. Sera's chest tightened. How? Poison. Meant for me. He pressed one hand against the glass. The old families didn't want me as sovereign. I was too young, too ruthless. They tried to kill me a dozen different ways. Lyra intercepted a drink meant for me at a state dinner. She was dead before morning. Kael? I burned the families responsible, he continued as if she hadn't spoken. Every single one. I made examples that are still whispered about in the territories. And I swore I would never take another mate. I wouldn't give my enemies that target. I wouldn't watch another person die because they stood too close to me. He turned back to face her, and the pain in his eyes was raw, terrifying. So yes, Sera. You touching me was a death warrant. Because now that the bond is awakening, I can't let you go. My wolf won't allow it. But keeping you means painting a target on your back that will never fade. Sera processed this slowly. That's why you've been alone for 15 years. Yes. And you think the same thing will happen to me. I know it will. He moved back toward her, but this time there was desperation in his movements. They're already planning. The old families, the rivals, the ones who want my territories. By tomorrow they'll know your name. By next week they'll know every weakness you have. And they will come for you, Sera. They will try to use you to break me. She should be terrified. She should demand he let her go, send her far away where she could disappear. Instead she asked, what if I'm not as easy to break as they think? Kael stopped. What? You said I'm a survivor. She lifted her chin. You said I was strong. Maybe I'm not some fragile thing that needs to be locked away. You don't know what they're capable of. And you don't know what I'm capable of, Sera shot back. I've been underestimated my entire life. By my pack, by my stepfather, by every alpha who ever looked at me and saw something disposable. She took a step toward him. Maybe that's my advantage. Maybe they'll underestimate me too. Kael stared at her. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, yes, but also something that looked dangerously like hope. You're seriously considering this? He said slowly. Staying. Being my mate. Even knowing it could kill you. I'm considering, Sera said carefully, that running from you might kill me faster. At least here, I have the most powerful wolf in the territories between me and my enemies. A sound escaped Kael's throat, half laugh, half growl. Practical. I'm an omega. We're good at math. She managed a small smile. Survival is just calculating which option is least likely to get you killed. He moved closer until they were almost touching. And your calculation says staying with me is the safer bet? My calculation says, Sera breathed, that I'm tired of running. And maybe for once I'd like to stand and fight. Kael's hand came up to cup her face. His palm was warm, calloused. If you stay, there's no going back. The bond will complete. You'll be mine, Sera. And I don't share. I noticed, she said dryly, remembering how he'd dismissed Garrett. His thumb brushed over her lower lip. I'm trying to be noble here. Trying to give you a choice. I know. She leaned into his touch. I'm choosing to stay. Why? The word was barely a whisper. Because when I'm near you, my wolf finally feels alive. Because your scent makes me feel safe for the first time in my life. Because something in me recognized something in you the moment our hands touched. But she couldn't say any of that. Not yet. So instead she said, because I'm tired of being nobodies. Maybe it's time to be somebody's. Even if that somebody is terrifying. Kael's eyes flashed silver. I am terrifying. I know. I've killed hundreds of wolves. I believe you. I will be possessive. Jealous. My wolf won't tolerate anyone else touching you. Good, Sera said, surprising herself. Because I'm tired of being touched by people I don't want. A low growl rumbled through his chest. Sera? Kiss me, she whispered. His control snapped. One moment there was space between them. The next his mouth was on hers, hot and demanding. His hands tangled in her damp hair, angling her head so he could deepen the kiss. She gasped against his lips and he took advantage, his tongue sliding against hers. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't tentative. It was claiming, pure and simple. Sera's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer. She'd been kissed before, Clumsy, unwanted kisses from wolves who thought they had the right. This was nothing like that. This was fire. This was inevitability. This was the bond snapping into place, golden and unbreakable. When Kael finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. His eyes were pure silver now, his wolf right at the surface. Mine, he growled against her lips. Yours, she breathed back. And somewhere in the back of her mind, Sera knew she'd just sealed her fate. Kael rested his forehead against hers, still holding her close. His breathing was ragged, his control visibly fraying. You need to sleep, he said, though he made no move to release her. It's been a long night. Where will you sleep? Sera asked. I won't. His jaw tightened. If I get into that bed with you right now, smelling like honeysuckle and want, I'll mark you. And you're not ready for that. How do you know what I'm ready for? His eyes flashed. Because you're still shaking. Because you flinch every time I move too fast. Because some bastard put bruises on you that haven't healed yet. His hand drifted to her ribs, carefully avoiding the tender spots. I can smell the pain, Sera. Old injuries, recent fear. I won't add to that. She hadn't realized he'd noticed the bruises. Magnus, 3 days ago. I refused to sign the contract. The temperature in the room dropped. Kael went very, very still. The enforcer who was with Garrett. Yes. Where did he hit you? Does it matter? He's gone now. Where's Sera? His voice had gone soft. Deadly. She pulled back the sweater, showing him the mottled purple-yellow bruises along her rib cage. Here. And my shoulder. And once across the face, but that healed faster. Kael's eyes had gone fully silver. He stared at the bruises like they were a personal insult. Then, very carefully, he knelt in front of her. His hands hovered over her ribs, not quite touching. May I? He asked, his voice rough. She nodded. His palms pressed gently against the bruises. Heat flooded from his hands into her skin, not burning but intense. Healing. Alpha wolves could accelerate healing in their mates, she remembered. It was rare, required tremendous control, and only worked if the bond was strong enough. The pain faded. The bruises lightened from purple to yellow to green, then disappeared entirely. Kael leaned forward and pressed his lips to the spot where the worst bruise had been. I'm going to kill him, he murmured against her skin. Slowly. Kael? Not tonight. Tonight you rest. He stood, guiding her toward the bedroom. Tomorrow there will be consequences for everyone who hurt you. But right now you're going to sleep in my bed, surrounded by my scent, and heal. He pulled back the covers. The sheets smelled like him, pine and snow and something else, something uniquely Kael. Her exhausted body swayed toward the bed. Will you at least stay until I fall asleep? She asked quietly. His expression softened. Yes. Sera climbed into the bed. The mattress was absurdly comfortable, the pillows perfect. Kael sat on the edge, his weight dipping the mattress. His hand found hers in the darkness. I'm scared, she admitted. I know. Not of you. Of what comes next. His thumb traced circles on the back of her hand. What comes next is that you sleep. And when you wake up, you'll be stronger. Your wolf is already responding to the bond. I can feel it. Given time, she'll emerge fully. I haven't shifted in 3 years. You will again, he said with absolute certainty. The bond will bring her back. Sera's eyes were already drifting closed. The combination of his scent, his touch, and the bone-deep exhaustion was pulling her under. Kael? Yes. Thank you. For the bruises. She felt him lean down, felt his lips brush her forehead. Sleep, little mate. I'll keep the monsters away. She wanted to say something else, something important, but sleep dragged her down into darkness. She dreamed of running through snow-covered forests, her wolf finally free, with a massive black wolf running beside her, silver eyes gleaming in the moonlight. Sera woke to voices. Angry voices, muffled but heated, coming from the main room. She sat up, momentarily disoriented. Sunlight streamed through the windows. Morning. She'd slept through the entire night, dreamless and deep once the running wolf dream had faded. The bed beside her was empty, but she could smell Kael's scent. He'd stayed close, probably on the couch, keeping his promise not to mark her before she was ready. The voices grew louder. Complete disaster. The council is demanding an audience. Let them demand. That was Kael, his voice cold. 4 territories, Kael. 4 separate alphas have already filed formal challenges to your choice of mate. They're calling her bloodline into question. Her bloodline is none of their concern. They're making it their concern. Lady Isadora arrived an hour ago. She's in the conference room right now and she's not alone. Sera's stomach clenched. Lady Isadora. Even she knew that name. Isadora Nightshade, daughter of the Western Territory's most powerful alpha family, and according to every rumor Sera had ever heard, Kael's intended political match. She slipped out of bed and padded to the door, pressing her ear against it. I don't care if she brought her entire pack, Kael was saying. The answer is no. She has legitimate grounds and you know it. The betrothal contract was signed by your father before his death. Technically it's still binding. My father is dead. His contracts died with him. The council doesn't see it that way. Rhys sounded tired. Kael, I'm on your side. You know that. But politically this is a nightmare. Sera Ashford has no pack backing, no political connections, no bloodline documentation. For all we know, she could be. Careful, Kael growled. I'm just saying what they're already whispering. Unknown Omega appears out of nowhere, captures the sovereign's attention. They're calling it a scheme. They think she's a plant. That's absurd. Is it? You've rejected every suitable match for 15 years. Now suddenly you claim a bond with a servant girl running from a forced mating? Kael, even you have to admit the timing looks suspicious. Silence. Then, get out. Kael? Out. Before I do something we'll both regret. Sera heard footsteps, then the elevator doors opening and closing. She counted to 10, then opened the bedroom door. Kael stood by the windows, hands braced against the glass, his back rigid with tension. He'd changed clothes, dark jeans and a gray Henley that stretched across his shoulders. He looked like he hadn't slept at all. How much did you hear? He asked without turning. Enough. She walked toward him slowly. Who's Lady Isadora? A complication. He finally turned to face her. His eyes were bloodshot, exhausted, but they still flashed silver when they landed on her. How are you feeling? Better. The bruises are gone. She touched her ribs. Thank you for that. Don't thank me for basic decency. He scrubbed a hand over his face. Sera, I need to ask you something and I need you to be honest. Her stomach dropped. Okay. Is there any possibility, any at all, that someone sent you to the summit specifically to target me? The question hit her like a slap. What? No. You're sure? No one approached you beforehand, offered you money or protection if you... I was hiding in the kitchen trying to avoid being dragged back to Crimson Vale. Her voice rose. I grabbed your arm by accident because someone bumped into me and I was trying not to drop a tray of champagne. I didn't even know who you were. Kael's shoulders dropped slightly. I believe you. But Rhys doesn't. And this council doesn't. And Lady whoever she is definitely doesn't. Isadora. Kael moved toward her. She's persistent. That's one word for it. Sera wrapped her arms around herself. Let me guess. Beautiful, powerful, politically connected, everything a sovereign's mate should be. His silence was answer enough. Great. She laughed bitterly. So I'm not just fighting assassins. I'm fighting every wolf who thinks I'm not good enough for you. Sera. They're right though, aren't they? I don't have a bloodline. I don't have pack backing. I'm nobody from nowhere, and the only reason I'm here is because of some biological accident. Stop. He closed the distance between them, his hands gripping her shoulders. It's not an accident. Mate bonds don't happen randomly. There's a reason our wolves recognized each other. What reason? She looked up at him. You said it yourself, you've met thousands of wolves. Why me? I don't know, he admitted. But I'm going to find out. Before she could respond, the elevator chimed. They both turned. Rhys stepped out, looking even more haggard than before. Behind him came a woman who made Sera's breath catch. Lady Isadora Nightshade was devastating. Tall, willowy, with platinum blonde hair that fell in perfect waves past her shoulders. She wore a blood-red suit that probably cost more than Sera's entire pack was worth, and she moved with the unconscious grace of someone who'd never been told no in her entire life. Her eyes, ice blue and sharp, locked onto Sera immediately. So, Isadora said, her voice smooth as silk and twice as cold. This is the stray. Kael's hands tightened on Sera's shoulders. Isadora. You weren't invited. No, I wasn't. She stepped further into the room, her heels clicking on the marble. But when I heard that you'd finally chosen a mate, I simply had to meet her. Her smile was all teeth. After all, she's taking the place that was promised to me. There was no promise, Kael said flatly. Your father seemed to think differently. Isadora pulled a folded document from her purse, holding it up. Signed contract. Witnessed by the council. A betrothal agreement between our families. My father had no right. Your father was sovereign when he signed it? That makes it legally binding. Isadora's eyes never left Sera. Unless, of course, you can prove that this girl is actually your true mate, which would require a blood bond ceremony. Public. Verified by the council. Sera's heart sank. Blood bond ceremonies were ancient, sacred, and irreversible. They required both wolves to shift, to hunt together, to mark each other in front of witnesses. If she couldn't shift, and she hadn't been able to for 3 years, she couldn't complete the ceremony. Which meant she couldn't prove the bond was real. Kael's jaw ticked. The ceremony can wait. Can it? Isadora tilted her head. The council has given you 72 hours, Kael. 3 days to either complete the blood bond with Miss Ashford, or honor the contract with me. After that, they'll consider your refusal an act of rebellion against pack law. The council doesn't give me ultimatums. The council, Isadora said softly, has 6 of the 7 territorial alphas behind them, including my father. If you want a civil war over this Omega, by all means refuse. But ask yourself if she's really worth splitting the territories apart. The threat hung in the air, poisonous and real. Sera felt sick. She was already causing exactly what Kael had feared: conflict, division, danger. Get out, Kael said quietly. Isadora smiled. 72 hours, darling. I'll be waiting. She turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Miss Ashford? I'd be very careful if I were you. This building might be secure, but accidents happen. Especially to wolves who don't know their place. She swept into the elevator, leaving the scent of expensive perfume and veiled threats in her wake. Sera waited until the doors closed. Then she pulled away from Kael. I can't shift. What? I haven't been able to shift in 3 years. My wolf went dormant when she stopped, swallowed. It doesn't matter why. The point is, I can't complete a blood bond ceremony. Which means I can't prove the mate bond is real. Kael stared at her. Why didn't you tell me this last night? Because I thought we'd have time. I thought maybe the bond would bring her back like you said. But 3 days. She laughed shakily. That's not enough. Then we'll find another way. There is no other way. The council won't accept anything less than the full ceremony. You heard her. Sera backed toward the windows. You should take the contract, Kael. Marry Isadora. She's right, I'm not worth a civil war. Don't. His voice cracked like a whip. Don't you dare tell me you're not worth it. I'm being practical. You're giving up. He stalked toward her. You told me last night you were tired of running. You said you wanted to stand and fight. That was before I knew I'd be fighting the entire council. So fight them. He grabbed her hands. Fight with me, Sera. We have 3 days. That's enough time to wake your wolf. You don't know that. I know that the bond is already stronger than it was yesterday. I know that your scent has changed, there's more of you in it now, less fear. I know that when you sleep surrounded by my scent, your wolf dreams. His eyes bored into hers. She's not gone, Sera. She's just waiting. For what? For you to stop being afraid of her. The words hit something deep in Sera's chest. A memory, old and painful, of why her wolf had retreated in the first place. I can't, she whispered. Yes, you can. Kael pulled her close. But not alone. Let me help you. Before she could answer, an alarm shrieked through the penthouse. Red lights flashed along the ceiling. Reese's voice came through the intercom, tight with panic. Sovereign, we have a breach. South entrance. Multiple hostiles. An explosion rocked the building. The windows rattled in their frames. Kael's eyes went pure silver. He shoved Sera behind him, his body already shifting, bones cracking, muscles rippling. Stay here, he snarled. Lock the bedroom door. Don't come out until I come back for you. Kael? But he was already moving, already changing. The massive black wolf from her dreams burst free, powerful and terrifying. He bounded toward the elevator just as it exploded open. 3 wolves poured out, all gray, all scarred, all with murder in their eyes. Rogues. And they'd come for her. Kael met them mid-leap. The sound of wolves colliding was like thunder, snarls, snapping jaws, the wet tear of claws through flesh. Blood sprayed across the white marble floor. Sera stumbled backward, her heart hammering against her ribs. She should run. Should hide. That's what she'd always done. But her feet wouldn't move. One of the rogues broke away from the fight, eyes locked on her. It was massive, easily twice her size, with foam flecking its muzzle. The sickly sweet smell of chemical enhancement rolled off it in waves. Someone had dosed these wolves with something to make them stronger, more aggressive, more disposable. The rogue charged. Sera ran. Not toward the bedroom, she'd never make it. Instead, she grabbed a steel lamp from the side table and swung it like a bat. The base connected with the rogue's skull with a satisfying crack. The wolf yelped, stumbling sideways. It wasn't enough to stop it, but it bought her seconds. Seconds she used to vault over the couch and grab the only other weapon in reach, a decorative iron poker from the unused fireplace. The rogue recovered, shaking its head. Blood dripped from the gash on its temple. It growled, low and threatening, and lunged again. This time, Sera didn't run. She planted her feet and drove the poker forward like a spear. The sharp end caught the rogue in the shoulder. It howled, thrashing, but the momentum carried it into her. They went down together, crashing into the coffee table. Glass shattered. Pain exploded through Sera's back as she hit the floor. The rogue's jaws snapped inches from her throat. Its breath was hot and rancid. Sera shoved the poker harder, using the wolf's own weight against it, keeping those teeth away from her jugular. Her arms screamed. She wasn't strong enough. Wasn't fast enough. The rogue's eyes gleamed with victory. It pressed down, jaws opening wider. And then it was ripped away. Kael had the rogue by the throat, his massive jaws clamped around its windpipe. He shook once, violently, and there was a wet snap. The rogue went limp. Kael dropped the body and shifted back to human form, naked and covered in blood. His eyes were still silver, his chest heaving. "I told you to hide," he snarled. "I tried." Sera gasped. It was faster. Another explosion rocked the building. This one closer. The windows cracked, spider webbing across the glass. Reese burst out of the stairwell access, gun drawn. They blew the south wall. "There's at least a dozen more coming up." He stopped, seeing the carnage. "We need to evacuate. Now." "The safe room," Kael said, already moving. He grabbed Sera's arm, hauling her to her feet. Blood, hers or the rogue's she couldn't tell, soaked her sweater. "Reese, lock down Protocol 7. Nothing gets through." "Kael, there's too many." "Do it." They ran. Kael pulled Sera through a hidden door behind the kitchen that opened onto a reinforced stairwell. Down, always down. Her legs burned. Her lungs screamed. Behind them she could hear howls. The skittering of claws on metal stairs. They were being hunted. "How many floors?" she gasped. 6 more. A wolf dropped from the landing above, cutting off their path. Then another. Then 3 more. 5 wolves, all chemical enhanced, all blocking their escape. Kael shifted instantly, putting himself between Sera and the threat. But even he couldn't fight 5 at once in a confined stairwell. The wolves attacked simultaneously. Sera pressed against the wall, watching in horror as they swarmed him. Kael was a whirlwind of teeth and claws, taking down 2 immediately, but the other 3 were on him, dragging him down through sheer weight. One of them lunged for his throat. Something inside Sera snapped. Not her mind. Not her courage. Her wolf. The beast that had been silent for 3 years roared to life, furious and protective. Mine, it snarled. Ours. Protect. Power flooded through Sera's veins, not the power to shift, not yet, but something else. Something older. The ancient Omega gift that her bloodline had forgotten. She opened her mouth and screamed. It wasn't a human sound. It was pure dominance, pure Omega authority channeled into a psychic shockwave that hit the stairwell like a bomb. The wolves attacking Kael froze. Their legs buckled. They collapsed to the stairs, whimpering, their aggression completely shattered by the overwhelming command to submit. Even Kael went still, though his eyes found hers immediately, blazing with shock and something like awe. Sera's scream cut off. She swayed, the power draining out of her as fast as it had come. What was that? Old blood, Kael breathed, shifting back to human. He stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "Sera, you're not just any Omega. Your firstborn line." "I don't know what that means." "It means," a new voice said from above them, smooth and amused, "that she's far more valuable than anyone realized." They both looked up. A woman stood on the landing above. She was older, maybe 50, with silver streaking through her dark hair. She wore tactical gear and carried herself with the confidence of someone who'd orchestrated this entire attack. "Commander Voss," Kael growled. "I should have known." "Should have, yes." Voss smiled. "But you were too distracted by your new toy to notice me positioning my pieces." Her eyes shifted to Sera. "Hello, little firstborn. Do you have any idea what you are? What you're worth?" Sera's legs trembled. "I'm nobody." "You're descended from the original Omega bloodline. The ones who could command entire armies with their voice. The ones who were hunted to extinction because they were too powerful. Voss started down the stairs slowly. Except clearly not all of them died. Your bloodline survived, hidden in some backwater pack, dormant for generations. Until you. Stay back, Kael warned, his body tensing to shift. Or what? You'll fight me in a stairwell while my wolves swarm the building? Voss laughed. I don't want to fight you, Kael. I want to make a deal. I don't negotiate with traitors. Not even to save her? Voss gestured to Sera. That little parlor trick took everything she had. Look at her, she can barely stand. If I order my wolves to attack right now, you might save her. Or she might die in the crossfire. Is your pride worth that risk? Kael's jaw worked. Sera could see the calculation in his eyes, the terrible math of combat odds. What do you want? He finally asked. Simple. Let me take the girl. I'll train her, help her master her abilities. And in return, I'll leave your territories alone. You can marry your proper political match, unite the territories, play sovereign. Voss's smile widened. Everyone wins. Except Sera, Kael said flatly. She'll be treated well. Fed, protected, taught to control her gift. That's more than she had before you, isn't it? It was. More than her pack had ever given her. More than she dreamed possible. But it wasn't freedom. It was just a different cage. Sera forced herself to straighten despite the exhaustion pulling at her limbs. No. Voss's eyebrows rose. I'm sorry? I said no. Sera moved to stand beside Kael. I'm not going with you. Child, you don't understand what you're refusing. I understand perfectly. Sera's voice was stronger now. You want to use me as a weapon. Turn my voice into something you can control, something you can aim at your enemies. She shook her head. I've spent my whole life being used. I'm done. Voss's expression hardened. Then you've made your choice. She raised her hand, signaling. Wolves poured into the stairwell from above and below. At least 20 of them, all enhanced, all slavering for blood. Kael shifted immediately, his black wolf larger and more terrifying than any of them. But even he couldn't fight those odds. Sera closed her eyes. Her wolf was there, closer now, no longer sleeping but not quite awake. She could feel it pacing, waiting. Wake up, she pleaded. Please, I need you. Her wolf's response was immediate. What? Why should I wake when you've kept me caged for so long? Because he needs us, Sera thought. Because for the first time in our life we have something worth fighting for. Her wolf paused. Then, slowly it stepped forward. Not fully emerging, she still couldn't shift, but lending its strength. Its power. Sera's eyes snapped open, glowing white gold. She drew a breath and unleashed everything she had. The scream that tore from her throat was different this time. Not just dominance but command. Not just force but precision. Submit, her voice commanded, targeting only the enhanced rogues. Sleep. They dropped like puppets with cut strings. All 20 of them, collapsing onto the stairs, their eyes rolling back as her power crashed through their drug-hazed minds and forced them into unconsciousness. Voss alone remained standing, though she'd gone pale. Impossible. No Omega has had that much control in. Kael's jaws closed around her throat before she could finish. He didn't kill her, not immediately, but held her there, fangs pressed against her jugular, giving her a choice. Voss froze. I yield, she whispered. Kael shifted back, one hand still gripping her collar. Reese, he called into his comm unit. South stairwell. Bring sedatives and restraints. We have prisoners. Sera's knees finally gave out. She collapsed onto the stairs, gasping. The power had burned through her like wildfire, leaving nothing but ash in its wake. Kael was there instantly, gathering her into his arms. I've got you, he murmured. You're safe now. Did it work? You stopped an army? He said, something like reverence in his voice. 20 enhanced wolves, dropped with a single command. Sera, do you understand what that means? She shook her head weakly. It means you're not defenseless. It means you don't need my protection. You're powerful enough to stand beside me as an equal. He pressed his forehead to hers. It means everyone who underestimated you, including me, was a fool. Footsteps thundered on the stairs. Reese appeared with a team of guards. They quickly secured Voss and began sedating the unconscious rogues. The building's clear, Reese reported. We got them all. His eyes widened when he saw Sera. What happened to her? She saved us, Kael said simply. He stood, still cradling her against his chest. Give me a secure medical team. And contact the council. Tell them we're moving up the blood bond ceremony. Sera's eyes flew open. but I can't shift. Your wolf spoke to you just now, didn't she? Kael's eyes were warm. She's waking up, Sera. The bond is bringing her back just like I said. We have 3 days. That's enough. And if it's not? He smiled, fierce and possessive. Then we'll face whatever comes together. But I'm not giving you up. Not to the council, not to Isadora, not to anyone. You're mine, Sera Ashford. And I'm going to make sure the entire world knows it. Sera should protest. Should argue that the logical choice was for him to take the political match, avoid the conflict. But logic had never kept her warm at night. Logic had never made her feel safe. Logic had never looked at her the way Kael was looking at her now, like she was precious and powerful and worth burning the world down for. So instead she whispered, "Yours?" His eyes flashed silver. "Mine." And when he kissed her there on the blood-stained stairs, surrounded by unconscious enemies and the wreckage of the attack, Sera felt her wolf rise up one more step toward waking. Felt the bond between them blaze brighter, stronger. 3 days to prove the impossible. 3 days to wake a dormant wolf. 3 days to become a queen. For the first time in her life, Sera wasn't running from her future. She was running toward it. 2 days later, Sera stood in the ceremonial grounds beneath the full moon, wearing a dress of silver silk that moved like water. Her wolf paced beneath her skin, still not quite ready to break free but so much closer than before. Kael stood across from her, shirtless, marked with ceremonial paint that traced the bloodlines of his ancestors. His eyes had been silver since sunrise, his control hanging by a thread. The council watched from the raised platform, stone-faced and skeptical. Isadora sat among them, her expression murderous. The elder stepped forward, ancient and wrapped in ceremonial robes. "The blood bond cannot be faked," she intoned. "Both wolves must emerge. Both must hunt as one. Both must mark each other before witnesses." Her eyes fixed on Sera. "If you cannot shift, child, this ceremony will fail. And the sovereign will be bound by law to honor the contract with Lady Isadora." Sera's hands trembled. She tried a dozen times over the past 2 days. Every time, her wolf had risen closer to the surface but never quite broke through. Kael stepped forward, taking her hands in his. "Trust her," he said quietly. "Trust yourself. What if it's not enough? Then we'll figure something else out. But Sera, I felt your wolf. She's not afraid anymore. She's just waiting for you to let go. Let go." She'd spent 3 years holding on, keeping her wolf locked away because letting it free meant feeling everything. The pain. The fear. The rage at everyone who'd hurt her. But maybe that was the point. Maybe her wolf didn't need protecting from those feelings. Maybe she needed to feel them. Sera closed her eyes and stopped fighting. Stopped controlling. Stopped being afraid. And her wolf surged forward with a joy so fierce it took her breath away. The shift was agony and ecstasy all at once. Bones breaking and reforming, muscles tearing and rebuilding, skin splitting to make way for fur. She'd forgotten how much it hurt. She'd forgotten how good it felt to be whole. When she opened her eyes again, the world had changed. Sharper. Brighter. Every scent distinct. The pine of Kael's wolf, the anger of Isadora, the shock rippling through the council. She looked down at her paws. Small, compared to the massive alphas around her. Russet brown with white socks. Beautiful, Kael's voice whispered in her mind through the bond. The mental connection snapped into place fully now, no barriers between them. "You're perfect." Sera's wolf wagged, actually wagged, before she could stop it. Kael shifted beside her. His black wolf was enormous, terrifying, but when he looked at her, his silver eyes were soft. The elder's voice rang out. "The hunt begins. May the moon guide you." They ran. Through the forest, under the moonlight, 2 wolves moving as one. Kael led her to a deer trail, teaching her to track with patient nudges and low rumbles. When they finally brought down their prey together, her driving it toward him making the kill, Sera felt something in her chest click into place. Partnership. Equality. Home. They returned to the ceremonial grounds covered in blood and moonlight. The council stood, unable to deny what they'd witnessed. Kael shifted back to human form. Sera did the same, easier this time, her wolf settling contentedly beneath her skin. "The hunt is complete," the elder announced. "Now comes the mark." This was the final part. The permanent binding. Kael approached her slowly, giving her every chance to refuse. Sera tilted her head, baring her throat. His teeth found the junction of her neck and shoulder. The bite was sharp, claiming perfect. Power flooded through the bond. His strength becoming hers, her gifts becoming his. When he pulled back, the mark on her skin was glowing silver. The mark of a sovereign's mate. Sera pulled him down, finding the same spot on his neck, and bit. The bond completed with a flash of light that made the council gasp. Golden and silver threads wound around them, visible to every wolf present, proof of a true mate bond that couldn't be denied or broken. When Sera released him, breathing hard, Kael's neck bore a matching mark. Gold on silver. Queen to his king. The elder bowed. The blood bond is complete. The council recognizes Sera Ashford as the true mate of sovereign Kael Thornridge. She turned to Isadora, whose face was twisted with rage. The contract with House Nightshade is void. Isadora stood. This isn't over, she hissed. That Omega may have fooled the council, but mark my words, she'll never survive being his queen. I'll make certain of it. Try, Sera said, her voice carrying across the grounds, and you'll learn exactly what a firstborn Omega is capable of. Her eyes flashed white gold just for a moment, and Isadora flinched. Kael's arm wrapped around Sera's waist, pulling her close. The ceremony is complete, he announced to the gathered wolves. Anyone who threatens my mate threatens me. Spread the word. As the council dispersed and the witnesses slowly left, Kael turned to Sera. They were alone now under the moonlight, marked and bonded and irrevocably tied together. How do you feel? He asked softly. Sera considered. Her wolf was curled contentedly beneath her skin. The bond hummed between them, warm and strong. Her body ached in a dozen places, but she'd never felt more alive. Terrified, she admitted. Powerful. Completely out of my depth. She looked up at him. But for the first time in my life I feel like I belong somewhere. You belong with me, Kael said fiercely. You always have. It just took us both a while to figure it out. He kissed her then, deep and claiming and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were molten silver. Take me home, Sera whispered. Our home. Kael lifted her into his arms, and they left the ceremonial grounds behind. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Isadora's threats, the political fallout, the targets that would never fully disappear from Sera's back. But tonight they had each other. They had the bond. They had the moon. And for a wolf who'd spent her whole life running, that was more than enough. It was everything. The end.